And we are live. Mad City Thoughts Film. Now, this video contains spoilers, and it is a long video, but there are time codes for different sections in the description box. Now, my own film critic rating for this, and this is what I gave it back when I first watched this in 2009. This is only the second time I watched this, and my opinion on it hasn't really changed. Yeah, I gave it a 6 out of 10, and I stand by that. And yeah, my personal rating is also 6 out of 10. Now, I suppose, yeah, I'm just gonna get right into. Oopsie. Right. "30 seconds. Yeah, I think I might in fact have made it back with time to spare. There we go. So, first section. Notes taken while watching. Now, just to briefly, I'm not familiar with the other work of the writers. Now, for the director, one second, that was not supposed to happen. There we go. For the director, I'm also not familiar, but they all, without exception, sound interesting. So I guess it's possible that at least some of the others also aren't, amazing, but just sound good. When, I read the, couple of lines about the, you go on IMDb, you open and you go into a movie, it has a couple of lines about the plot at the top. Read every single one of those, every single one of them sounded interesting. But then, I saw that one user reviewer was saying that the director, I forget, Spanish or Italian or something like that, his Hollywood movies are, all of them, none of them are as good as his foreign language ones, and I could absolutely imagine that. That's my experience with several other directors, such as, off the top of my head, Alejandro Amenabar, sorry. My Spanish teacher would kill me if she watched these. His original, Spanish-made movies are much, much better. I don't think that The Others is a bad movie, but it's definitely not as good as the ones he made before it. And has he made... I don't remember his entire filmography, but certainly the ones he made before that. Anyway. And in watching the trailer, I quite like the line, "Is the news what we need to know or what we want to hear?" And from here on out, this entire section are the notes I took while watching it this time. The opening, where we see something assembled that looks like a gun but turns out to be a camera for a news person, it's kind of corny and, obvious, not necessarily in that we immediately know that it's a camera, but obvious in that, it's not... Yeah, it's a kind of obvious thing to do, I'll grant that they pull it off well. It does genuinely look and sound like a gun, especially the very first couple of seconds of it. It doesn't necessarily... The illusion doesn't necessarily last all that long, but, it sets a tone, which, yeah. And we see that Max is arrogant because he used to work in New York, but he moved to, I think they say where it is, I forget, but it's like a smaller place. It's not as important of a place as New York. and he isn't really wanted back in New York. And we meet the other security guard. Yeah, as far as I recall, yeah, there are two security guards, and Sam was fired, and the other one wasn't. Cliff wasn't. And let's see. But yeah, we are briefly told that he doesn't make very much money. And one of the kids points out that, two of the dinosaurs are from different periods and shouldn't be together. And, like, it's that thing. I don't even think they're talking to the museum staff. They're talking to the teacher, I think. It's like, I don't decide where these things go. The kids don't always understand who's in authority where. Yeah. And Sam walks in, clearly hiding something. And Max doesn't realize that the intern can hear every word he says in the bathroom. And Sam gets out the shotgun. And let's see. I noted I think it's Lori, says, call the police. And Max says no. She says she's going to call the police. And Max says no. And let's see. Yeah, and I forget who says this. I think it's someone who works in the news. Says, there are kids in there. We don't want any grandstanding, and Max appears to be less worried. And we also have, early on he says, you can't. It's something about it's not crossing the line. It's just moving the line. And then later he realizes that that was just rationalizing. It is crossing the line. And Sam heard the window and walks towards the bathroom. He opens the door, but he doesn't see Max, who's right next to the door, and on the side of it that, he's covered by the door. The museum, Mrs. Banks, I think, she's got serious guts. And Sam accidentally shoots the other guard. And some of the kids think it's cool that the gun was fired. And Sam sees that he's on TV, and he goes and finds Max. And we see that people ignore a street preacher to watch the storyline on TV, as the preacher points out stuff like this happens every day, and the word of God is eternal. And I don't know, is that supposed to be like, is it saying that people should listen more to street preachers, or is it just trying to, I get that let's see, if what it's getting at is just, it's just that he just happens to be the voice of reason here. I don't know, I feel like there are some important things that we hear on the news that aren't in the Bible. But yeah, I don't know. At times, it's a little. I don't think it's that's not the strongest case of the movie making its case, which I will get to. And reporters try to interview Cliff, the guard who was shot, and. And the children see their father, the security guard, on TV. And Max casually tells Sam what he should say, as if he works for him or something. And Max tells Sam that if he interviews him, people will understand Sam and he won't get as much jail time. And we realize he brought dynamite. And we're told, his brother uses it legitimately. And some of the other news people are impressed with Max. And, Max tells Lori, why didn't you, bring the camera when you help the guard. And she's just like, I can't hold the camera and help someone at the same time. And Max is disappointed in her, and you know, he thinks that she should focus on, you know, putting it on TV. Now, and Max walks back in with the camera equipment for the interview. And Max says that a black kid should be released so people won't think Sam is racist. Just to briefly talk about, I think the movie does, you know, later he hears his own words repeated on TV. You know, he didn't, I mean, he knew that what he was saying was being recorded, but he assumed that it wouldn't end up in the hands of someone who would put that on TV. But you know, clearly hearing it back later, you know, by then he's also changed his opinion on it. But yeah, he clearly, you know, he hears how ugly it sounds. If I sit a little unevenly or such, I still have some issues with my back. I have a chiropractic appointment, so you know, hopefully not too much longer, but just so you know. Excuse me. Now, and the press run up and scare the two children by trying to interview them, overwhelming them. And Max tries to make sure Sam explains to the camera so that the audience best understands. And with loaded questions, the interviewer gets the best friend to say, you know, he's weird, he's got a temper, he's dangerous. You know, he's clearly not even really thinking about what he's saying. And the reporter, you know, most likely she realizes that he doesn't really think about what he's saying. She just wants him to say, you know, it'll be a good soundbite. And the reporters again overwhelm and scare someone. You know, she's just trying to get them to not step on her flowers. And Max makes sure Sam is looking directly at the camera, you know, behaving almost like a movie director or something. And the kids are excited at seeing themselves on TV. And Sam confronts Max on camera after giving this, you know, trying to get people to see things from his perspective. He, you know, says, well, what about this other perspective, which, you know, clearly he isn't, like, prepared for. And, wait, sorry, did I say Sam? Sorry, Max confronts Sam on camera. And we see, you know, that the footage of that story that got Max fired, with Max getting angry at his coworkers' willingness to cross the line in reporting something violent. And the FBI guy says the police shouldn't take Sam down before public opinion is against him. And Sam accidentally fires the shotgun because he can't stay awake. He takes caffeine pills. And, you know, the kids are hungry, so he lets them into the vending machine, becomes their hero for at least a couple of hours. And we see they're already selling t-shirts with Sam's face on them. And Banks points out, you know, Max is doing this for his career, and he says, you know, the museum will be famous. And Cliff, the wounded cop, sees himself on TV. And you have a group of people performing a rap in favor of Cliff. I think it's "What About Cliff" or something like that. And Max interviews Sam's wife, and at times is basically interrogating her. Sam entertains the kids. I think it's bubblegum, but I'm not 100% sure, that he's using. And Sam becomes anxious when he sees his wife on TV. And then he fires the shotgun out the window, clearly not to hurt anyone, but it does scare everyone. Honestly, it feels a bit forced. It's a contrived way to increase the tension. It doesn't feel like the character would do this. I get that he's upset because his wife is, you know, basically he doesn't want his wife involved in this. but it doesn't feel like it really, it feels like it's just forced in there. Now, and Laurie is a big fan of Hollander. And I did kind of like, Max talking to Laurie. She's like hugging him, and he's like, "Don't touch me, I'll get arrested." And Max edits what Sam's former principal said to make it sound like, he basically says, "We're not to blame," and Max edits it to saying that they failed him, I think is what yeah. And Laurie gets Sam's mother to talk about how Sam loves their dog. And Holland wants to take the story away from Max. And the kids are running around the museum, and Sam talks about the Native American, and then you got the tactical team aiming through the windows on the top of the museum, and they think he is like aiming the gun at the kids. When he's telling them a story, he doesn't think about where he's pointing it. I think that falls on the less contrived side, because he has shown that he's not really thinking about where he's pointing it a lot of the time. And yeah, some of what he says about the Native American is racist. And I think we see that there's like a storm, it's raining a lot, and then there's like a thunderclap, and the lightning. I think because of it's, yep, I am aware of the high CPU usage. Basically the light is behind some of the tactical team, so the shadow is cast where the children can see, and they start screaming, and the team starts shooting, but Sam gets away without having been hit. I feel like that worked okay. I don't think that was too contrived. And Sam and Max bond. Sam talks about his level of education, what job he could get, and Sam says he's famous in a bad way, and Max says it doesn't matter, it's on TV. And Max on the phone might get his own show if he helps out the other guy, if he works with him. And now there's like carnival/circus stuff outside of the museum. They literally, I think one of the media people, the older guy that Max works for, is like, this is a circus, and it's a little too on the nose. There are literal circus performers there. That's the thing, and I'll admit, I am. Yeah, I'm as progressive as you can possibly be, and I will freely admit, when we make movies that are really like very much to convey our point of view, like this movie, it can get really contrived, and I intend to talk more about the work of, cannot believe I'm blanking on his name. He wrote The Truman Show, and he wrote and directed movies like Simone, or Sim 1 and blanking on the other, but he has a tendency to write, to push it a little too far, to make it too contrived, and that happens in this as well. Just now, and Hollander wants to do a negative angle on Sam, and Max finally finds his conscience, and Sam goes on Larry King, and Max tries to answer for Sam, and Sam becomes angry and sends Max away, but he won't let him leave the building. And yeah, I forgot to note when it happened, but you know, in an earlier scene, Laurie's very ruthless to try to get Cliff's wife to, go along. I think to give her the exclusive interview by telling her, "I was the one who saved your husband." You know, that is a true statement, but it's very manipulative to, you know, she's not saying that to, she's saying that as if she is somehow owed the interview. And Sam hears what Max said about him on TV, and that's what I talked about earlier. Sam puts down the gun, and the police give him 5 minutes to surrender. And Cliff dies, and his wife tells everyone on TV. And the kids are allowed to leave, and they say goodbye to Sam. One of them even thanks him. And Sam tries to commit suicide with a shotgun, but he's out of shells. Sam makes Max hit the road after he falls down the stairs after the blast of dynamite. I was trying to fit a Sam and Max hit the road joke into, you know, from the very start. I don't, were the games, had there maybe been one of them from this is a movie from like 1996, isn't it? So I'm not sure people really thought of the, just when I hear those two names in connection with this, yeah. And, you know, yeah, the dynamite blows, you know, it's very much Chekhov's dynamite. And Laurie tells Max, Sam's dead. It's a bigger story now. And we have one last shot of reporters crowding someone, and this time it's Max who keeps saying, "We killed him," referring to the press. And the movie is an hour and 50 minutes long, not counting the end credits, and an hour and 56 if you do count the end credits. The song over the end credits is decent. And I suppose, yeah, this is what I wrote back in 2009. So, my old review, yes. Oh, 1 second, I need to write that here. Also, I'm making the camera bounce, apologies. The thing is that what I'm using to, you know, as a flat surface to write on happens to also be, you know, the thing that the camera is attached to. Not directly, but yeah. Now, yeah, like I said, I gave it a 6 out of 10. And let's see, yeah, I compliment the, yeah, I guess I'm gonna go ahead and just read it. The acting is marvelous, every role is well cast, and neither lead outshine their character, rather they disappear nicely into the roles. It's engaging and it comes across rather credible and psychologically accurate. The production is not flashy, nor does this feel thrown together. Editing and cinematography are good. It's genuinely funny here and there. You know, but basically every time it tries to be funny, it's, yeah. And I don't think the humor like overwhelms. You know, this could really have been completely ruined if there had been too many jokes or jokes at inappropriate times. But I would say it's, yeah, it knows how to use it. The pacing is great, and this doesn't really lose your interest as such. Heck, the children aren't even particularly irritating. Honestly, on this viewing, I didn't find them irritating at all. Anyway, so why do I give it that relatively low of a vote? Well, frankly, it seems to put forth all it really has to say within the first 15 to 20 minutes, and after that, it simply keeps restating it occasionally in a different way than earlier in the movie. The one message that this contains is that the press can and will blow things out of proportion and manipulate facts as well as those who follow them in order, as well as those who follow them in order to stay informed. As admirable as it is, let me just briefly, I mean, yeah, I think I could maybe have expressed that slightly, but it's also about that the media would rather like get a lot of viewers than solve an actual conflict, which is kind of pushing it. You know, there are probably some who feel that way, but yeah, again, it's pushing it to yeah, a bit of an extreme. Now, as admirable as it is to make an effort to ensure that everyone is aware of that sad truth, don't we all already know that? If this would at least explore it, go into what has led to it, what makes people go along with it, it would quite possibly make for an excellent cinema. As it is, this honestly winds up being a one-sided attempt at convincing its audience that things are a certain way, no matter what else they might believe, which is ironically exactly like the type of news reporting that it is trying to decry. While 15 Minutes wasn't a masterpiece, it at least had satire and was more entertaining than this. There's some violence and brief language in this. I recommend this to the biggest fans of those who made it. And get 6 out of 10. And 0 out of 2 people found this helpful. Yeah, so just to briefly... I watched 15 Minutes, you know, around the same time that I watched this, before I watched this the first time. I haven't watched it since, so I'm not going to say anything. I might feel completely differently about it today, but yeah, you know, it is basically about the same thing, and from what I remember, it is more like kind of gripping, and while it also pushes it into, you know, it's not quite credible, but the satire I found was fairly good. Again, from what I remember, I might feel completely differently about it today. I was a very different person 10 years ago. And I guess, yeah, if I had a copy of 15 Minutes and, you know, I was going to do one of these two movies, but not both of them, I would probably have gone with 15 Minutes, which is not to say that I'm unhappy that I rewatched this. It's perfectly well produced, and, you know, it knows what it wants to say. It's not a confused movie, but it is one of those things where I think the thing is that we progressives, we find that just the fact that, you know, for example here, that someone would focus on their career before feeling empathy for other people, including ones who are in danger. You know, that by itself, the fact that is true of some people, that by itself we find, you know, we find compelling. We think that should be enough to change people's minds. And so we don't always get to, you know, when with a movie you have to have something more than a viewpoint, good actors, and, like, you know, yeah, good filmmakers. You have to have some more and then ultimately I don't think the movie really does. It just keeps restating the one thing that it has, and yeah. So I suppose that more or less, yeah. You know, the 15 Minutes, the movie has stuff in it that, I mean, just the title, you know, it obviously refers to, was it Andy Warhol who said, in the future everyone will be famous for 15 minutes, you know, and it is in fact about, you know, some people having their 15 minutes of fame, or seeking their 15 minutes of fame. And, you know, although I think he was right, but Tim Minchin more recently asserted that it's 15 minutes of shame, which, yeah, you know, today that is more the... Anyway, that movie pushes things so far that, you know, I've always said, for the last year, I have always said that basically every movie creates its own world. No movie completely reflects reality. That is simply not, you know, documentaries maybe, but no piece of fiction completely reflects reality. Every piece of fiction creates its own world, and over the course of the movie's running time, you get, you know, the movie presents all the things that it, you know, the things that it especially wants to convey about the world that it has created. And ultimately, you know, you as a viewer are left, you know, you as a viewer judge how close you think it is to reality, and everything that isn't close to reality, those are maybe the things you should pay the most attention to. You know, why is this not quite like reality? And sometimes it's because it's making a point by going past what is real, what is credible, realistic, and sometimes it's, you know, sometimes it's convenience. It's not always, you know, it's not always intentional, it's not always a good thing, but it is interesting where, and 15 minutes pushes things in a couple of places that I think are very telling, and I feel really make the point very aggressively, very, and this movie makes the point, but it's mostly, you know, you have a couple of contrived places, you know, contrived pieces of writing. I mean, yeah, it's just the fact that he does shoot Cliff by itself is, it's not contrived. Yeah, like I said earlier, it's not really contrived, but it is sort of, yeah, actually, I think I want to take back what I said earlier. It is kind of contrived. It is the fact that he just happens to, you know, Cliff happens to be walking there, you know, and that's the thing. If this movie wasn't worried that, you know, it would be more realistic if suddenly the door opens loudly and without thinking he turns and shoots, and then he realizes it's Cliff. But him just accidentally firing it randomly at that time, and Cliff randomly being in the line of fire at that exact time, it's just, it's, but the thing is that if they, very likely they felt that if he just happened to shoot, you know, if he shot because he got shocked by a noise like that, people would focus on gun control and have less sympathy for him, and that's not what they wanted to do. You know, ultimately, for, you know, I think, yeah, it's the movie. It would probably have been, yeah, it should have been rewritten at least somewhat. But you know, it creates this situation. I think the fact that someone who doesn't necessarily think things through and is really worried and just lost his job, the fact that, you know, the idea that he takes hostages, I mean, that is something that happens. You know, not everybody who takes hostages is just like a monster who wants to kill everyone. I'm not saying it's not okay to take hostages under any circumstances, but I'm saying not all of them are like, you know, Breivik or something. Anders Breivik, I want to say his name was. Yeah, I'm not always good with names. And that's the, yeah, I think the situation itself is credible enough, but when they try to go for like drama, it sometimes gets kind of contrived, and I don't remember 15 minutes as being contrived. It's a bit, it can get kind of extreme, but I don't think that the extremes hurt it. I think that those just make the point more aggressively, and I really don't think, I'm sorry, if you watch 15 minutes and you take everything that happens in it to be completely 100% supposed to be a representation of reality, I really think you're misjudging. I don't want to use the word misunderstanding, but I don't get the sense that was, it's insulting to tell someone that they're misunderstanding something, but I don't think that was what the filmmakers intended. I don't think, when I watched that movie, I did not get the sense that the people making the movie believed that what they were putting on film was the way reality was. I got the sense that they wanted to present this kind of exaggerated version where the exaggeration would hammer home the point. And again, from what I recall, I felt that it worked. Now, I suppose, yeah, that brings us to IMDb, Wikipedia, and critics' sites. Now, the tomato meter has no consensus with, let's see, it has a 37% on the tomato meter with 27 reviews counted. Let's see, and 17 of them are rotten, and 42% of the audience liked it with 9,593 user ratings. And let's see, right, and the audience, the average rating was 2.9 out of 5, which, yeah, that I agree with that. Now, let's see, here we have the Rotten Tomatoes critic reviews. Now, let me just briefly say, I only read the critic reviews here, so I'm not 100% certain. This is going to be a short video if I ended this soon. So I'm gonna try my best to avoid any dead air, but it's possible that I'll read some of the user reviews and see if I have something to say, and it can get kind of annoying if I just read aloud a bunch of user reviews without commenting on them. But I didn't get around to reading. Let's see. Yeah, we're on page 4 of 94, and all the rest of it is reviews and then a little bit of Wikipedia. Anyway, let's see. This simplistic and obvious expose about the manipulative power of the news media, I wouldn't say lazily acted. Anyway, the reviewer says, lazily acted by Troll John Hoffman, is so familiar that it's not going to upset or provoke anyone. And yeah, that's the thing. It just, they didn't really take it any further. They you know, it's like the movie is the equivalent of, like, you know, reading a story and then like excitedly forwarding it to other people. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with excitedly forwarding stories to other people. That's a good thing. The problem is that doesn't work as a movie. You know, the movie basically feels like maybe the writers, I guess, yeah, maybe they just recently realized how manipulative, you know, news media can be, and they didn't, yeah, you know, they didn't sit down and very carefully, again, this is what it feels like, I'm not saying it's what happened. I do feel like it was written carefully, because it's not especially like, I would say it's largely well written. It's just the fact that it doesn't really have anything to say past, isn't this terrible? It is terrible, but if you only have, you know, there's, I don't know if I can come up with a good example just off the top of my head. The movie Changeling. I watched it months ago, and I'm not going to try to review it, but that movie also is trying to convey to the audience, you know, this is something terrible, you know, and it is. You know, as far as I understand, it's based on a true story, and that legitimately was horrible. I mean, they maybe also, what that movie does is it has a lot of different details, and there are plot points. You know, the movie, you know, over the course of the movie, we learn new things about the circumstances and such, which ultimately this movie, yeah, like, I'm not sure exactly how how it should have been done, but maybe there could be like gradual reveals of things over the course of it, or yeah, maybe, I mean, the movie already doesn't, the movie is more focused. I don't know if that's ironic or coincidental or fitting, but the movie is more focused on the way the press frames the hostage situation than the hostage situation. So it wouldn't have been a huge stretch for the movie to just, yeah. There are a lot of scenes in this where reporters are talking to other reporters and like trying to get interviews and such, where they're basically just talking about, you know, they want to, you know, yeah, most of the reporters are in favor of milking it for all it's worth, and a few of them are saying this is tasteless. Instead of just a lot of that, yeah, maybe have, you know, more scenes of people reacting to what is being said in the news, and maybe feature stuff like, you know, maybe there's someone who at first doesn't really, you know, he thinks that that the story shouldn't be, you know, that they should let the police do their job, but then one of the reporters, you know, not in response to that, but I'm just saying, at that point, one of the reporters, maybe that's when the dog thing comes up, you know, and then that viewer, excuse me, goes from having just been, excuse me, focusing on they should let the police do their job to, oh well, he can't be a bad person if he's a dog person, you know, yeah, things like that. And I really think if it explored it instead of merely stating it, I think this could have been I think this movie could have been incredible. Where as it is, it's well produced and doesn't really have a lot, yeah. And the media are vultures is the prevailing point here, and it is not expressed in the most original or interesting of ways. Let's see. A wannabe event movie that merely reinvents the wheel. And yeah, that's all of the Rotten Tomatoes reviews. The rest of them are just ratings. Now, Oh, right, I put Rotten Tomatoes user reviews, all 12 pages here instead of putting the Metacritic professional reviews here. Again, I'm going to try not to have dead air. I'm going to try to have something to say. Again, I don't want to just read these out. I know I used to, but you can look these up for yourselves. It's not like they're behind a paywall or only available to some people. Let's see. And this is off topic, but yeah, this is one of those where okay, let me just read. When I heard of the story for this film, I was very intrigued, but it was really hard to find a copy of this, but luckily I finally found one. This is almost never something interesting to tell the people reading or watching your review. It is like there's a there are stories that involve that kind of thing that are interesting and worth telling, but a lot of people just want to say, you know, I couldn't find a copy right away, but then, you know, that by itself, like, I don't know if this is interesting, but I was once told, someone else found this interesting. The first many times, you know, the first time I tried to watch Desperado, it was on TV, but I couldn't watch it at the time. And this was in the time of VHS. You know, I did actually watch this, you know, as a VHS. You know, I'm trying to get through all the VHS movies that I want to review before eventually my VCR is going to just, you know, die. And I don't know where I'd find a new one. But it might make for a really boring story to put in a review. But so I set the tape to record, and what I didn't realize is that there were not very many minutes left on that tape. So instead of getting to watch Desperado the movie, I was able to watch the first several minutes of movie. And, you know, yeah, this is not a spoiler. Those minutes are very, very compelling. And it's this sort of thing where, I mean, an entire story is told within those minutes. And yeah, it cut off right, I think right before when Cheech Marin is about to hand a beer to Buscemi, and he's like, you know, I think he's coming this way. That was when the tape cut off. So the first 50 times that I watched the first several minutes of Desperado, I didn't watch the rest of the movie. It was several years after the first time I watched the first minutes of the movie that I was actually able to watch the rest of the movie. And that can kind of color, you know, the first time I watched the rest of the movie, I was surprised that the entire movie wasn't like those first several minutes. So some people find that to be an interesting story. And, you know, that's actually something that it changed my perspective on the rest of the movie. You know, it wouldn't have meant the same to me if I hadn't watched it like that. But just saying, it took me a while to find a copy, you know, if it isn't yeah, this guy says, you know, the obvious comparison is Dog Day Afternoon. And let's see. And yeah, let me just briefly. It did make me laugh that Max said he had a wife that took their child with her because of Kramer versus Kramer. They also talk about a TV movie in here, but luckily that can't be used as a joke about the film, saying that it should have gone TV because this is good, right? Yeah, although I doubt they'd be talking about something like that right at the end of the film, as everything is heated. They must have mentioned Mel Gibson in this because they were filming in 1996, and Braveheart won big at the Oscars that year. And I think it's someone else who says it, but someone points out that there's this greedy guy called Mr. Burns. That, yeah. Let's see. And let's see. Right, this is as far as I read of the user reviews, apparently. Let's see. And someone's whining about critics, of course. Kostagavras, if that's how you pronounce it, is the director. And yeah, this guy appears to have watched other of his movies, and yeah, he says this hostage drama looks compelling on the surface, but in actual fact, it's a mashup of Ace in the Hole and Dog Day Afternoon, but with none of the compelling bite. I'm not sure I've watched either, but from what I understand, these are movies people have watched. Yeah, that is true. And let's see. Honestly, let's see. Yeah, this gave, the kidnapped kids having no real problem with armed men keeping them hostage away from their homes and family for days on end. And the final reel has a terrible sense of pointlessness about it. Yeah, that's a good, yeah. Let's see. I guess. Yeah, this one reader says, I have never been so bored in my entire life. You have a lot of really boring movies, that you could, yeah. I can come up with quite a few more boring movies than this one. Let's see. I think maybe it would have been interesting if instead of a gun that he accidentally fires, maybe it should have been something that, like, it's like maybe it's behavior that is, he's used to a certain environment where that particular behavior is completely okay, and because now, like, everyone can see him doing that on TV, a lot of people who aren't in that environment, you know, they find it like off-putting. I think that would have been an interesting commentary on, you know, this kind of perspective and how, because it is, you know, there are scenes where the character, you know, we see some of the audience back in their homes watching it on TV will start to like judge various things. And yeah, I think it would have been interesting if it had been like they were judging stuff that was, you know, that they didn't consider okay, but which was, you know, I don't even necessarily mean, it doesn't have to be something that's generally thought of as unacceptable behavior. It could just be something that, if, you know, in a certain environment where it is very, like, where you don't have a lot, maybe. Yeah, in an environment where people have to make do with what they have and they can't afford to throw anything out, for example. You know, that some behavior that fits in that kind of environment, but not, you know, but to other people might seem like you're just cheap, like you don't want to spend money on, you know, yeah, something like that would maybe be, yeah. Let's see. And yeah, and this guy says, in fact, it's hard to do a movie about moral problems of sensationalism that doesn't resemble the yellow press itself. It really, yeah. And yeah, this, I do want to, excuse me. Yeah, this guy says, Travolta is not typically an actor that I like. I don't really have an opinion on him, either way, personally. But he was incredibly convincing. Anybody who has never seen a typical Travolta movie would probably believe that in real life he is a nervous and insecure person. And I would definitely, that's one thing that I was thinking while watching it is, this guy played Castor Troy in Con Air. You know, that's unreal to me. But yeah, I mean, I can recognize his face. That's him. That's actually, was that the same year? Was that 95? It wasn't even very far apart, you know. So yeah, I was very, very impressed with the yeah. And I like Ted Levine in it. I tend to like him in things, but I have to admit, the first several years after watching The Silence of the Lambs, when I saw him in something, it was difficult not to think of, is that a spoiler to say who he plays? His character in that movie, and you probably know why, yeah. Let's see. Excuse me. This one guy says, you know, today it's more relevant than, excuse me, ever. Let me just really quick. Yeah, and he wrote that 8 years ago, so it is definitely relevant, and that's why it's frustrating that it's not more, that it doesn't explore more the, yeah. Let's see. We're on page 2 of 12 of user reviews and page 15 of 94 of overall notes. Let me think. I also think, I mean, I don't know, I'm not sure that, it's been a while since I watched Dustin Hoffman in very much, so, but it does seem like, yeah, other stuff I've seen him in, he's not so, you know, yeah, in this, he is a vulture, and I think he plays that very convincingly, considering that the other, you know. Let me just try to fill the dead air here. I thought he was amazing in The Graduate, I want to say it's called. You know, the Mrs. Something, You're Trying to Seduce Me. I guess I'm just gonna go ahead and skip. I'm gonna go ahead and skip ahead. And while I do that, I want to say that the reason that I did put in the user reviews from IMDb is that there were 12 pages instead of, you know, 50. So a lot of the time there are just so many that I don't, yeah. These are the critic reviews from Metacritic, and this was given, the overall, the Metascore comes to 45 out of 100. 23 critics with 5 positive, 14 mixed, and 4 negative. Let's see. Right, Ace in the Hole is Billy Wilder, yeah. Yeah, I definitely gotta watch more Billy Wilder. Yes, this is a good, yeah. This dark comedy drama rambles on too long and strains credibility at times. That is, yeah. Let's see. Unfortunately, Mad City merely pumps up the volume on material that has already been picked clean. Yeah. It's always at least a little disingenuous to attack the medium that's your bread and butter. This media bashing movie tries to get around the problem by restricting its critique to television, specifically the news. Let's see. Just yes, and Roger Ebert, as he could sometimes be, he absolutely nails it. Mad City might have been more fun if it had added that extra spin, if it attacked the audience as well as the perpetrators. As it is, it's too predictable. The absence of originality and inspiration isn't Mad City's only problem. It also suffers from a shocking lack of subtlety. Excuse me, let me just... Let's see... there's not too much else that I really have to say about it. So this guy, a blanket indictment like this has to be either satirically trenchant or a roundhouse punch to the gut. Tom Matthews' script takes a mushy middle ground, and the result seems less mad than just a bit addled or hacked off. And I guess a lot of people seem to think that Hoffman and Travolta are lazy, but I don't. Yeah, I don't really agree with that. And I guess and that takes us to the Metacritic user reviews, and this has an 8.5 total based on 30 ratings, 25 positive, 4 mixed, and 1 negative. And let's see. Oh, that's right, there's only one. I forgot about that. There's only one review. The ratings, there are more ratings, but not. Which takes us to the IMDb reviews. 74 reviews, and I did not note what the IMDb rating is. I am just going to see if something pops out at me as especially compelling to get into, and if I don't find anything. And obviously, Hoffman also does great in, blanking on the name, but the one where he plays an autist, and Tom Cruise. It's because there was an I in the second of those two names. That was it. Tom Cruise. The plays his brother. That was what I wanted to say, just to make sure people know exactly what movie I'm talking about. Which is, of course, not a movie that did did any favors for people who have milder forms of autism, but I'm not gonna get into that here. I just want to note that is, but that's Hollywood, and that movie is Oscar bait too, isn't it? So of course they're gonna go for. I'm not sure there are a lot of movies that give accurate portrayals of autists and people with Asperger's syndrome and such, but I guess until I find something, I'll just, I liked how I recently rewatched I forget what he called it, but Folding Ideas talked about the movie The Book of Henry and really picked apart all the stuff about it that is bad. And he for example, among other things, he talked about how Henry is this genius kid, and they have some money problems. So what's it called? Little Man Tate, I want to say, which I think there are some good things about that movie, but that movie definitely is. It could definitely be a better movie, and just if you haven't already, definitely watch the Folding Idea. He did 2 videos. One of them's a vlog, and the other one he edited in stuff. And I think both are worth watching, but if you're only going to watch one of them, definitely make it the produced one, because he uses clips incredibly well in that. And just, yeah, I love his takedown of, cop on the edge Henry bursts into the police chief's office, threatens to turn in his badge. Just, yeah, it's unreal. The fact that people made that movie and thought they were making a good movie is unreal. And that takes us to the IMDb trivia. And there's only 4. Let's see. Oh, that's right, yeah. The pastor in the news montage is an actual pastor of the church where the filming took place for his brief interview. The crew was filming, he was watching, and was talking with one of the assistant directors, who then invited him to appear in the movie. He had no prior acting experience, which, yeah, I mean, he's convincing. I mean, it's, obviously, yes, he's convincing as the job he has, but no, he seems sincere. I mean, they told him what to say. It's not like he's just talking off the cuff. He is reciting lines and imbuing them with the emotion that is called for. That is something that, yeah, actors spend their entire lives honing their craft. And yeah, he's, in this case at least, appears to be a natural. That's right. Blythe Danner, is that how you pronounce that? And Dustin Hoffman. Yeah, the Meet the Parents sequels, they're both in. I only watched the first one, and from what I hear, I shouldn't bother with the rest of them. I feel bad for Terry Polo, because I really think she can be incredibly funny when she gets to be, and I'm not sure I've seen her get to be anywhere other than that short-lived TV show I'm With Her, which I think I would have watched more seasons. I found that one season it got to be perfectly decent. I've seen far worse shows get far more seasons, and just, there are things I really like about it. I'll probably never do an actual video on it, so I'll just briefly say, for example, I thought that the jokes, some of them were obvious, but some of the jokes about kind of Hollywood stuff I thought were great. And yeah, probably my favorite was, but the show, just briefly, the show's about Terry Polo is basically like Julia Roberts, and the male lead on the show is like high school teacher or something like that, and they fall in love despite being from different worlds. And so she can sometimes tell him things that, things that she wouldn't, she would be worried certain other people hearing her say. And one time they go on this press tour, or yeah, she's talking to the press and such, and she comes in and she's spent a lot of hours talking to the press, and she's like, I'm exhausted. There are only so many ways you can tell everyone that your director's a genius. By the way, my director's an idiot. And there have to be so many people who feel exactly that and can't say. And I really love because you see all these interviews and it's like, oh, my visionary, just, just an absolute genius. And they never, obviously a lot of them, they can't tell the world, this guy's a complete idiot, because they want to get hired again. Let's see. And that's it for the trivia. That brings us to, we're on page 88 of 94. That brings us to the IMDb quotes. And again, not gonna get into all of them. Miss Banks, go make sure the buffalo are grazing properly. And there's, here the quote ends there, but she then says, bisons. I stand corrected. I thought that was quite, yeah. And also, I like this exchange. I'm who Americans trust for their news. You really shouldn't let a marketing slogan go to your head. Let's see. And I also copied in the movie connections. Again, there are so few. Usually I don't. I didn't used to. Anyway. Yeah, it points out, Dog Day Afternoon. It mentions the Terminator. I'm not sure why whoever added the Terminator here didn't bother, It was I think Max is the one he says, oh, he got fired and now he becomes the Terminator or something like that. Reference to The Fly. I think I might have missed that. And what? There's a thing called Hollywood Remembers Dustin Hoffman. It's from 2000. He's not dead, is he? He definitely wasn't dead by 2000. Did I? I'm sorry. I haven't paid attention to his. I mean, he was. No, because he was in the Meet the Parents sequels, which were made after 2000. So, yeah, it's one of those. Sometimes that term doesn't mean that the person died. And let's see. And it features Larry King live in Tonight Show with Jay Leno. I thought it was, it adds credibility to have the two of them. Jay Leno was only on for very, very short, but Larry King actually, he was on screen for maybe 2 minutes or something. He didn't speak for the entire duration of those, but adds credibility. Again, makes us feel as though the world that the movie is set in is our world. And let's see. Right, and Watch Mojo did a 2013 video called Top 10 Hostage Movies, and Mad City is number 10. And I watched the video. I don't really have anything to say in regards to it. Let's see. Cliff's theme song. I don't know if that's the rap. Written by Costa Gavras. Okay then. Whoop, sorry. Didn't mean to bounce the camera. If it did, I'm not sure it did. And yeah, and that brings us to Wikipedia and page 92 of 94. Okay, let's see. $50 million budget and $10.5 million box office. Yeah, that's. I guess I can kind of see the budget. I mean, it's not a flashy movie, but there is some stuff in it that I could see how it gets to, yeah. And let's see. Yeah, that's right. The title comes from a nickname of Madison, Wisconsin, where it was originally going to be set, and was used for its multiple meanings, which Madison, Mad City. Yeah, I guess I can kind of see. I don't think I'd particularly want to live in a place nicknamed Mad City, but yeah. Let's see. Okay, so here's the Wikipedia plot. Again, I'm not going to read this out loud, but just in case there's something here that I wanted to highlight or comment on, I'm going to briefly read, and I'm going to try not to let there be any dead air. Right, the children are at the museum on a school field trip. And let's see, and Max acts as Bailey's intermediary to the outside world and the police. And Let's see. And Max revives his career by, reporting the inside story exclusively on television. And let's see. And Bailey wants the police to let him return home to his wife and kids, refusing to accept that he's going to jail. And let's see. Right, now I thought that the various actors did perfectly fine in the... I didn't really think there were any really bad act. I thought the kids did pretty good job. Let's see. Right, under critical reception. Film critic Roger Ebert noted Mad City is inspired by the film Ace in the Hole and gave the movie 2 stars out of 4, writing, "The movie knows what it wants to do, but lacks the velocity for liftoff." And yeah, that's definitely a part of the issue. I guess that's gonna be it. I don't think there's really anything else that I have that I want to say. I think that it can be done better than this is really I think that is everything. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed watching, as I somewhat enjoyed watching and enjoyed recording, and I will catch you next time.